welcome to Education in Our Community. This show is about lifelong learning, teaching, and mentoring, intergenerationally and multi-generationally, the combinations of youth and adults from birth to death, ongoing. And today we have the privilege of talking about African American history, which continues from day to day, month to month, year to year. It never stops. And I'm so privileged to have the only head of Black Studies in the United States here at Berkeley High School, the Reverend Robert McKnight. It's the only Black Studies department in America at a high school, as far as I know. I know it started years ago. And there was a Mr. Richard Navies who was responsible, along with Mr. Clarence Hampton. I know you're going to tell us about African American history. I'd like to have you just start with the way that you would like to address it. This is the month of February. However, history is every day of the year.
That's a great intro, Dr. Cannon. I appreciate it. And it's the African American Studies Department at Berkeley High. At this time, to my knowledge, according to some research that was done by a graduate student at the University of California at Berkeley that interviewed me, this is the only surviving department of African American Studies in the United States. This has been approximately a year and a half ago that study was completed. There was also the last one prior to Berkeley was in Salem, New Jersey, she said, but it was no longer active. They also had one in Detroit, Michigan as well, in public schools. There are many schools, several schools, who offer certain course offerings, such as African American history or African American literature. One or two offer a course in African dance. In Berkeley, it cuts across all academic disciplines, with the exception of math and science. Students can take courses in the performing arts. We have a renowned, world-renowned, internationally known dance instructor for African dance, Miss Naomi Washington Juve, and her husband, who's a master drummer, Dr. Zach Juve. And we also have courses in African American literature, African American history, psychology, the psychology and sociology of male-female relationships. We haven't offered the course in over a year, also in journalism, a course in econ that's taught from an Afrocentric perspective, as well as government that is taught from an Afrocentric perspective, and a 3-year course offering in Key Swahili that's available to all students at Berkeley High. The department came into existence in 1968-69 school year as the result of the advocacy of students. At that time, one of the students that headed it up was the late Ronald Stevenson. And Mr. Clarence Hampton became the first staff person to become director, not chairperson, but director of African American Studies. It was a district-wide program. And of course, after he went on to become principal of the adult school, the late Dr. Richard D. Navies took over and built the department until his untimely demise in March of 1991, at which point I became the chairperson because we no longer had a program or course offering at the elementary school, which we originally had. That's how I came into Berkeley, to work with teachers, because they had mandated that the 5th grade social study unit would be African American history. And so we had consultants at Malcolm, Longfellow, Lincoln, then Columbus, now Rosa Parks, who worked with the teachers in how to teach African American history. Then we were on a different model. We had junior high schools, now middle schools, and we had teachers there teaching African American literature and history. Was 2 courses offered at the junior high, and we had complete course offering here at the high school. And we worked together with, who was there? With Mr. Melvin Newton, who was department chair when Merritt was on then Grove Street, now Martin Luther King Way. And that's the history of African American studies in Berkeley.
There was a Mr. Richard Hunter at the Longfellow School who developed something called Blackening the Curriculum. Do you remember that?
Yes, he was principal,
yes.
If memory serves
yes,
me
he was.
Correctly.
And so the whole school had that view of looking at the curriculum from a black perspective. And then they had jazz classes there. That jazz group, the jazz orchestra was outstanding, and they made, they were on television because of the work they had done, that it showed that the evolution of the curriculum. And then it came over to one of the junior highs where I was teaching, Willard Junior High.
Yes.
And the jazz group came over there. Rodney Franklin was the outstanding young man who played, I think it was, I don't know if what instrument he played, as I recall.
I remember Rodney
And
Franklin.
his sister was very talented too, a singer.
Yeah.
But I just think that so much of that curriculum was developed at the middle school or junior high level and elementary school as well. And then he went on to become, he did a lot of work with the integration for the Berkeley schools, Mr. Richard Hunter.
Yeah.
Then he moved to, I think it was Virginia, to develop, he became the superintendent in someplace in Virginia. I've forgotten the name of the place. It might have been the capital city.
Yeah, I read about that years ago in the Johnson Jet publication. But I also recall that the late, the renowned, the great gentleman of jazz, Duke Ellington, came to Longfellow.
He did?
Yes.
Oh, was it when they had the jazz group there?
Yes, and there were some publications that we put out in the department called Duke Ellington Comes to Berkeley.
Oh, that was
And so the Duke came to Berkeley.
Oh, that's wonderful.
There at LeConte. And I'm sure Mr. Hunter was instrumental in getting him here.
Yes.
But he came to Berkeley.
And the 2 directors of the jazz group, I think they were white citizens in the city of Berkeley, but outstanding. And I think one of them had the last name that sounded a little bit like Ellington. I can't remember his first name, but I believe that that's who it was. But it's so amazing that all of this happened. You might remember Sister Effie Clark, who helped in the development of the curriculum that was used for
Merritt, along with her husband.
That's right. And I went to, there was meetings that they had developing the curriculum with Mr. Hampton, because that's when Black Studies was being incorporated into Merritt College as well.
Yes.
And then you remember when Grove Street existed on, that was the Merritt College in the Flatlands?
That was a true concept of community college.
Yes, it was. And I remember Stokely Carmichael came.
Stokely was in and out.
Yes, he spoke there many times.
Yes, I remember that. Kwame Ture, he changed his name to. But he would come to Merritt frequently.
Yes, I went to hear him over in San Francisco when, let's see, the famous actor, his wife had an art studio, Danny Glover, his wife,
I thought you were
and they
talking about
hosted
Danny.
him there. Were you there for that event?
I wasn't there.
Sister Clark, I believe, no, Reverend Eloise Oliver gave the prayer to open up the meeting. But Kwame was ill at the time and under the care of a local doctor here in Berkeley.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the very famous Tutashinda is his last name.
I heard of him.
Yeah, Kwele Tutashinda.
Yeah, I heard
very
of
well-known doctor. And he also has a rich background in history. I believe his parents, one was at Spelman College. So we have a lot of people who have a touch with history all across this nation.
Yes, right here in Berkeley and Oakland, very rich
Yes.
in the tradition of African history.
That's right.
We watched the program develop at Merritt College. I was a student
Is that right?
at that time.
That's interesting.
When Stokely was coming into Oakland.
You were a student.
Yeah, I went to Merritt College.
Is that?
Yeah.
Now listen, because the history is so interesting with you, because when I came to Merritt College, you already had been an instructor there for years. I mean, in terms of your depth of experience.
Yeah.
And to me, that's very impressive.
Yeah.
You know, it shows the history, the evolution of the history.
There was a history teacher there by the name of Mr. George Dascarolis.
Yes, I remember. He was a white professor.
Yes, he was from Greece.
He started the program, I believe.
He was the first teacher there,
They didn't
to
have
my
any,
knowledge.
That's right. There were no African-American
history.
teachers available.
And after Mr. Dascarolis, after I had left Merritt, I think it was Huey and Bobby Seale,
Yes.
who brought Dr. Cecilia Arrington.
Oh, they did, didn't
She
they?
came in after Mr. Dascarolis.
Yeah, that's right. They brought her from Castlemont High School.
From Castlemont High
She
School.
said, she used to give a testimony about that. They came to observe her teach at Castlemont, and they insisted that she come to Merritt College.
Yeah, I remember that.
When Huey passed away, she gave a speech at the service.
I attended that eulogy.
And that was so
there.
powerful.
Very moving.
Moving. I hope that was recorded for posterity, because
Very moving.
because she told the whole history of the evolution of Merritt College.
I was there.
And then I remember one time a group of researchers came to Merritt College. I was in charge of the library at that time, and they wanted to trace the history of Black studies because they thought it had started in some other place. They had come from England, I believe, and they wanted to find about the history because they originally had started on the West Coast, and they discovered that it was, well, no, the East Coast. They found out that it was on the West Coast.
It was on the West Coast.
Merritt College.
It was at Merritt, and right on the heels of Merritt, there was San Francisco State. You will remember that explosion there.
1968 also, I believe.
Yeah,
yes.
But Merritt was first. Merritt was first.
Yes.
Because if memory serves me correctly, at the insistence of Huey, they originally started with a course called Negro History. Mm-hmm. And here at the high school, they started with a course entitled Negro History that was taught, can't think of Miss Samantha's last name.
Oh, Samantha was her first name?
Yes. And she later became principal here at Berkeley High. But she started out as a history teacher.
Oh, yes, I remember her.
Then counselor.
Yes.
And then principal here at the high school.
That's right.
And I think before he became the director, Mr. Hampton also taught that course. Mm-hmm. And about that same time, we had a lot of African Americans at the central administration.
Yes. Mr.
Dr.
Lawrence.
Kathy Favors, Lawrence Wells, George Perry, Harriet Wood. All of them were there. Mm-hmm. And then they started recruiting nationally for African American teachers.
That's right.
And they went into Detroit, a suburb of Detroit, and recruited Richard at that time.
Richard Navies. Is that right?
Yeah.
He was from Detroit.
He was from Detroit, a graduate. I think he completed both his undergraduate and graduate work at Wayne State. He's very proud of that.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and an English major.
He got his, I believe that his undergrad could have been history,
Yes.
but I know that his graduate degree was in English.
Yes, yeah, I remember he was so talented, and that was so helpful for the students to have an English person dealing
He was
with
just
this.
fantastic.
Yes, with that major.
Yeah.
Very essential.
He was very athletic as well as scholarly, and what a tribute to him that his oldest child, Kelly, has gotten her doctorate in anthropology.
Is that right?
She's in D.C.
Okay.
And his oldest son, Richard is a teacher in Washington, D.C.
Richard Navis.
His younger son, Hannibal,
Oh, Hannibal.
had an outstanding career as a professional football player. Hannibal played, I know, for Green Bay, and he retired, but San Francisco needed a linebacker, and they called him out of retirement, and he concluded his career as a linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers.
Hannibal Navis.
Yes.
Wow.
And so the spirit of Richard D. Navis lives on in his children, one carrying on the intellectual, the academic part of his life that he was so committed to, and the other carrying on in terms of a athlete, sportsman, and he comes every summer and runs a football camp here
at Berkeley High
at
School?
Berkeley High School. It's called the Hannibal Navis football camp.
And Hannibal himself comes?
Yes, and he brings in other active players as well as many who are retired.
Well, that is such
And it's open to all students in the Bay Area.
And I remember one time you had Richard Navis Jr. here on a TV show in the studio.
Yes,
and
he came.
Did that show ever get aired?
It did air.
With your students? Did you show it to your students at Berkeley High?
No, I should have. I had him come teach a course, guest lecturer. But my hopes were that he would come and do the program at Berkeley High School.
Oh, yes.
I really haven't given up on
You
that.
haven't that's good.
I haven't given up.
Yeah.
What a legacy that would be.
My husband was a minister. You might have heard of him, Reverend Booker T. Anderson Jr.
Oh, yes,
and his
I have
philosophy,
one of his books.
His books. Do you have the book called Come Alive, Stay With It, and Never Give Up?
Well, that's the one I have.
Come Alive, Stay With It, and Never Give Up.
I
and
have
that's
that
what
book.
I'm hoping you will do with Richard Navis.
Yeah.
The second?
Yeah.
Yes. Because that sometimes it's persistence that pays off, or perseverance. Yeah.
And then you had mentioned that history is not just celebrated once a year in a month, but history is ongoing. I know Dr. John Henry Clark, an excerpt from a quote that he has is, whether something happened 5 minutes ago, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years, 500 years, it impacts and influences what we do today, because all history is a current event. And so the history of a people, the history of a nation, the history of a thing, all history is important. Yes. Malcolm said that history is best qualified to reward all research. And we cannot understand the present unless we go back and gain some knowledge. Do Sankofa, I think. Go back and gain some knowledge of the past.
Sankofa is the bird that goes forward but looks back as it's moved forward.
Yes.
Did you see the movie Sankofa?
I've seen it, and I use it every year in class.
Yes. I had the privilege of seeing it here in the city of Berkeley at one of the local theaters, and I understand that it wasn't shown very much after that initial effort, but I did buy a copy of it.
I have several copies, but it was shown at the United Artists. We took students to see it.
Okay.
Mr. Dory Davis and other young African-American teachers, It was also shown and premiered at the Grand Lake in Oakland.
Yes.
Now, I stand to be corrected, but to the best of my knowledge, these were the only two theaters in the Bay Area that showed the film.
That's similar to the Malcolm X story that Haley wrote.
Mm-hmm.
It was shown at a theater on Shattuck, I believe it was, and that was a part of Berkeley, I believe. But it didn't show at other theaters. It was that original book about his life. I don't know if you knew about that,
No.
Malcolm X. But it's the autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley.
I'm going to have to go online, internet, and find out about it. I did not know about it. I did not have an opportunity to see it.
Yeah. I'm trying to recall if I went to see it now, because history goes by so quickly.
Yeah.
That's why I think it is good to have copies of the different things, because they do, as you said, things happen in a moment, and it's very important. But if it's not captured, that's why journalism, I think, is very important. And it was good to hear all of those courses that you're offering here in Black Studies.
Yes.
That's truly amazing. Economics
Yeah.
and government
Yeah.
from a Black perspective.
Yeah.
Do you have persons teaching that every year?
Every year, every
Oh,
year.
good.
Speaking of the importance of your records, Marvin X, tremendous poet and
Yes.
writer from the 60s, he just stopped by the other day, and he was talking about the importance of archives.
Yes.
And he told the students, we all have archives. It's your story. You should have a journal, a diary. He says, when the elders of a family transcend, when they pass on, you're busy dividing up the material thing, and no one takes time to get their records together and to keep them, and how important that is to a family.
Oh, now that speaks volumes, because on the Savannah River, I don't know if you've been to Savannah.
Yes, I have.
Have you seen the African American Family Monument? Yep. All right, that's from an organization that I've been working with.
Yes.
I'm serving presently as the national director. And we're going to be having our 10th anniversary of placing that monument on the Savannah River.
We took a picture next to it, the wife and I.
Oh my goodness, I'll have to tell the group that it has been captured by the head of Black Studies at Berkeley High School, because I really think that, and the family show that we did with you and your wife, that's very, ties in with what we're going to be emphasizing. As a result of the monument, we really want to build the curriculum and have our focus on the family and bringing it together in a holistic way to strengthen, to bring forth the resilience of the family, the African American family, that has endured despite the odds over the years. It has been very devastating. And to overcome that devastation, that took a lot of grit, you might say, and persistence, determination. So I really think that we're onto something in terms of the economics and the government, how we do what we do. Policies. So do you have a strong emphasis on policy, how policy can be developed?
We're just now beginning this semester for the spring semester. Matter of fact, we just concluded the first week of the new semester Friday.
Really?
And that's our beginning. You know, the opening dialogue was, why is government necessary? And so we had one of our, I'm trying to avoid that word, retired, but one of my former colleagues, long-time instructor in government, to come and to do a couple of the opening lectures on government. And he talked about Mr. Robert Collier, and he talked about the importance of
Mr. Robert
policy.
Collier, yes. He's a minister too.
He is a minister. He is a minister and a pastor.
Yes. I had the privilege of working with him at Willard Junior High in an experimental school It was a
Yeah.
really wonderful experience,
Yeah.
working with parents included into the process, and a small school within a school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he talked about the fact that, there are three basic institutions in society. There's the family, the church, and the school.
Oh.
And of course, you have the government. But the first institution is the family.
Okay.
That's where government begins.
Okay.
Anytime you have two people, there is the need for order, because there's going to be conflict.
That's
I don't
right.
care whether it's husband and wife, sibling, parent and child, business associates. And so he talked about the first level of government is the family,
Is that right?
and explored very thoroughly the role of the family, and called upon the philosophy, I forget which one said it, the fact that no nation, no government can be any more effective or stronger than the households that it governs.
My goodness.
That if the families are weak and fragmented or corrupted, it'll be reflected in the leadership, because we frequently seek out leadership that reflects our own values.
Oh, wow.
We later denied.
What was that? We later do what?
Denied.
Deny?
Oh, yes.
Denied
Who would
them.
have elected him as president or as governor?
Oh.
Because they expose our weaknesses.
Let's see if I'm understanding what you're saying. The family is the basic institution for government.
Of any society.
All right. That's
It is
powerful.
the center and source of its civilization. And every time, immediately after we get to this point,
Yeah.
it is time to tell our viewing audience,
yes.
until next time, we thank you for sharing with us in education in the community. And I'm Reverend Robert McKnight, and our host is Dr. Barbara Cannon. Thank you, Dr. Cannon.
Thank you, Reverend McKnight,
Yes.
about the family. I'm so happy.